Convicted rapist and drug addict Nicholas Ninow is begging for leniency. Sentencing proceedings are underway in the High Court in Pretoria. For more on this story, we cross to our reporter, Ofentse Setimo, who's been observing proceedings in the court today. Ofentse, so what's the latest? I see that there's been some sort of adjournment today.
Yes, well, basically the state has actually wrapped its aggravating arguments, and the defense lawyer as well was also arguing in mitigation. So they have wrapped their arguments, and the judge is going to consider their submissions and come up with a sentencing. As you know, for the past 2 days, there have been a couple of witnesses that have been called in to argue in mitigation and in aggravation. Among them has been a probation officer, has been the accused's grandmother, as well as a social worker, who all have actually been arguing. But one who actually stood out was the probation officer, who actually recommended a lesser sentence for Ninow, saying that he would be a risk following the exposure that he has in the media, in the papers, in the press, and everywhere else. But what we know from the other crimes that have been committed, that is the possession of drugs and defeating the ends of justice, prosecution has actually recommended that he be sentenced to 5 years each for both charges. But we're still awaiting to hear for the rape as to what's going to be the sentence itself.
Ofentse, in terms of when the sentence will be handed down, when are we expecting that?
Well, the judge has said that he will return around 2. He might be delayed because he has to consider the submissions of the defense and the submissions of the prosecution. So he said around 2 o'clock, that's when we'll actually get to hear the sentencing itself. So we are actually waiting to hear the outcome of this case. As you know, that it started around September last year when he was actually arrested. So Ninow has already spent a year in prison. That was one of the factors that the defense wanted to use in mitigation, but which was rubbished by the prosecution.
Yeah. One last thing, Ofentse. Okay, so we're waiting now, but what's the feeling there in the court, outside the court? What are people saying?
Well, the court was actually packed with EFF supporters and ANC supporters, and the sentiment is that they should actually effect a maximum sentence of life because, as you know, the rape occurred against a minor who was 7 years old at the time, who could not even consent towards that act and can't enter into a contract itself. So they feel that, the maximum sentence of life should be effected in this particular case.
All right, Ofentse, we will touch base with you a little bit later. Thank you very much. That's my colleague there, Ofentse Setimo, reporting from the Pretoria High Court.